it's Tina and I am back, and it is time for another swatch party. So this is gonna be a swatch fest for some of my favorite eyeshadows from one of my favorite indie brands. And indie brands are like taking over the market for me for single eyeshadows because they're not afraid of color, they're not afraid of going bright and bold, they're not afraid of mixing up formulas and being creative and just trying different things. They're not just your everyday neutrals like we should do an all neutral palette and we should only stick. No, they're going bold and bright and metallic and shimmery and shiny, and they're just fantastic. So for this video we're talking about Give Me Glow Cosmetics, and I love this brand. I've mentioned this brand many times. I've done swatches of their eyeshadows in hauls for you guys. I've spoken very highly of this brand, and it is about time that I went ahead and swatched the shadows that I have from them for you guys. And these swatches are strictly for their single eyeshadows that I have. I also have eyeshadow palettes from them, but some of those eyeshadow palettes are discontinued, so I don't know, like, what do you guys want me to do with that? You let me know down in the comments. I know some of the eyeshadow palettes are still available, so I can probably still swatch some of them, but I'm gonna just do the single eyeshadows in this roundup. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into the swatches, and I will leave timestamps down below because this is gonna be a long video, and I'm gonna separate the swatches by finishes. So I'm gonna do the matte eyeshadows first, and I'm gonna run through the neutral and more natural shades, so like the brownie tones first, and then I'll jump into the more colorful mattes, and then I'll jump into the shimmers and kind of navigate it that way. So I'll leave timestamps down below so you can jump ahead to whatever section you want to see, and I will also leave timestamps for the 5 P's that we will run through after the swatches, which are price, packaging, purchasing, product, and performance. So let's go ahead and jump into the swatches, which will be done by a brush. So for the swatches, I'm using Anastasia Beverly Hills A3 eye shader brush, and I'm applying all of these swatches over a very light layer of primer, which is my Too Faced Shadow Insurance. This is so old and expired, can I tell you, but it still helps to give the eyeshadow something to stick onto rather than just a dry arm. So let's go ahead and jump into the swatches, and I'll see you after that to talk about all the other things. The first shade up is Marshmallow, which is described as a pure white matte. This is a smooth matte white. It has great color payoff and it applies pretty evenly. Then we have the shade Cream Please, which is described as an ultra pale ivory white. This is a creamy beige shade with more of a peachy undertone to it. It builds up really nicely on the skin. Then we have Retro Beige, which is described as a 70s beige. This is a sandy beige shade which leans more on the tan side. It has a hint of like a gray neutral undertone. Here's the shade Cute in Khakis. This is a matte mid-tone gray brown shade with a hint of like a khaki green undertone. It's really smooth and it applies really nicely in a couple of swipes. Then we have Mushroom, which is described as a grunge ash brown. This is a medium tone brown with a gray ashy undertone. Again, one that gives us great color payoff and applies very smoothly. Then we have the shade Fierce, which is described as a neon orange peach. This one is a light peachy orange shade. It's more pastel and it comes off a little bit sheer, so you do have to build this one up for good pigmentation. It's not patchy, but you do need to layer it up. Here we have Hey Chick, which is described as a muted yellow orange. This one is a beautiful like mustard yellow shade. It has a lot of orange undertone to it, but it also has a lot of yellow to it. It does need a little bit of building up as well, but as you can see, it's not dry or patchy. It still layers up pretty smoothly. Here we have Hashtag, which is described as a dirty orange. This one is a muted bold orange, and I say that because they said it's a dirty orange, and it kind of is. It's subdued, yet it's still a bold orange, and this layers up like a dream. One swipe and I have full pigmentation. Then here we have Whiskey, which is described as an orange brown. This to me is more of a yellow orange than an orange brown because it does come off very orange, more like a tangerine. It's a beautiful shade as well, layers up really nicely with great pigmentation. So here you have a look at these 9 matte shades. Some of them have a little bit more pigmentation than others in one swipe. A couple of them need some more building up, and some of them are definitely going to need a stickier base to really build up on your skin. This shade is Nude Rose. It's described as a pale pinky nude. This is a medium tone, pinky, peachy nude shade. It has pretty decent color payoff. It does need some layering up though. This shade is Dramatic, which is described as a deep peach. This is a deeper, kind of muted brick orange shade. Pretty great color payoff in one swipe. Then you have the shade Chili, which is described as a rustic red orange. This is a deep, dirty red shade, like a brick red. It's very rich and the pigmentation is definitely there. Be careful though, because it does deepen up a little bit as you apply it, so it can come off a little bit muddy. This shade is Concrete Jungle. It's described as an ultra pale taupe. This is a mid-tone gray shade with some purple undertones. It's kind of like a mauvey gray because it has that rosy purple tone to it. It's actually like perfectly named. That concrete definitely does stand out. This shade is Trust Fund. It's described as a grungy lavender. This is like a gray tone purple shade. It definitely gives you mauvey gray tone vibes. It's very beautiful. I love this color. It's so different. I wouldn't call it lavender. I would call it like a dirty gray tone purple. And here we have the shade Rose Quartz. This is described as a dusty mauve. This is a medium toned rosy, I would call it like a rosy nude. It doesn't come off really mauve. It's more like a rose shade, like a medium rose tone. Great pigmentation. One swipe, no issues. Then we have the shade Gossip Girl, which is described as a grungy, dusty rose. This to me is a medium tone purpley brown shade. It's really gorgeous and really different. I would call this more of a dusty, dirty purple brown shade versus like a dusty rose, because it definitely is deeper than a rose shade. Then we have the shade Americano. This is described as a neutral espresso brown. This is a beautiful like coffee brown shade. I love this. This is great for deepening up looks and it applies smoothly with great pigmentation. No skipping, no patchiness. This is the shade Leggings, which is described as an ultra black matte. This is a beautiful, just true matte black. It has decent pigmentation. It's not gonna give you like ultra black, which is kind of what you need with a black anyway, because you're gonna build it up. You don't need it to be ultra pigmented. So here you have all those shade swatch. I think they have great pigmentation. The color payoff is amazing. They didn't apply patchy at all. And I love that these shades are kind of unique. They're not your everyday neutral mattes. There are different nuances to all of them. They have different undertones. Like, who would have guessed that we would have gotten this dusty purple shade or even this dusty deep purple brown? They're amazing. I love these shades. Now we're moving on to the colorful mattes. So the first up is Electric Purple, which is described as a neon pastel purple. It's definitely a bolder purple. It's not really pastel. I wouldn't call it pastel, and I wouldn't call it neon either. I think it's more of a medium tone red purple. It applies pretty well. It does take some building up, and it actually applies a lot darker than it appears in the pan. Here we have the shade Greatness. This is a beautiful blue base, darker purple. It's really gorgeous, applies really well. It's a little powdery, but there's no patchiness at all. It builds up really intensely. Such a great matte purple. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. Here we have the shade Sky High. This is such an intense turquoisey blue. It's so bright, it's so beautiful, it's so pigmented. This one is gonna leave some staining behind on the skin, but oh my god, it's so gorgeous. Look at that, oh my god. Here we have the shade Breakfast at Robin's. This one is a beautiful medium tone kind of minty green. It does apply a little bit darker than it looks in the pan, and it does darken up around the edges, but it's a beautiful color that builds up really nicely. Here we have the shade Limeade. This is described as a neon ultra matte lime. This is such a beautiful neon lime green. It's a little bit like a medium tone neon, but it's so beautiful. It does take some layering up, as most neons do, but once you get it applied, oh my god, it's so gorgeous. Here's the shade Patty. It's described as a St. Patty's Day green. This one is a beautiful medium grass green. It applies really well and builds up nicely again. Such a beautiful vivid green. This shade is Olive View. This is a pure olive green. This one is a beautiful muted olive green, but it has like a neon quality to it, and it's so vivid and it applies so well. I love it. Here we have the shade Space Dust. This is described as a deep gray. This one is a beautiful deep gray shade. It's a beautiful true gray matte. It's so stunning. I love this one as well. So here's the first set of matte colorful shades, and I love every one of them. The only one that's kind of tricky is the Breakfast at Robin's, which is actually discontinued, so who cares, right? But look at this purple, look at this blue. Oh my god, look at these greens. These are so stunning, and they all apply really well on the skin without being patchy. Moving on to more of the bright mattes, we have the shade Raspberry Cheesecake, which is described as a raspberry pink. This is a beautiful, like, deep raspberry pink. It's a very beautiful shade. It has a hint of like a fuchsia undertone, and it does deepen up, so it looks deeper on the skin and over a primer versus what it looks like in the pan, but it applies really nicely and it gives great color payoff. Then we have the shade Strawberry Lollipop. This is described as a bright hot pink. This is a bold, bright, red based pink. It's a intense hot pink. It's really beautiful and it applies really well. It's a little bit like drier on the skin. It feels dry, but it applies beautifully without being patchy. Here we have the shade Low Battery. It's described as a bright, vivid red. This is a beautiful, deep, true red shade. It's very vivid, very intense. I love it, and it applies really well. Again, a little bit dry, but it's very smooth and not patchy. Here we have the shade Blackened Plum 2.0. So this is an upgraded shade. It's described as a deep smoky plum. This is a beautiful, deep eggplant purple. It's so smooth, it's so pigmented. Oh my god, love this shade. This is great for using in dark, colorful looks where you don't want to use a black, but you want to add some richness to the crease. Here we have Cupcake, which is described as a medium tone, cool based pink. This to me is a medium tone salmon pink. It comes off like a little bit peachy. It leans a little bit warmer of a pink. It's really gorgeous and really smooth. Next up is the shade Sweet Bitch. It's described as a deep coral red. This is a deep rosy salmon shade, applied really smoothly, no problems. It would be a really beautiful color to use in a warm look because it has that warm undertone to it. Really gorgeous. Then here we have the shade Crazy Coral, which is described as a deep red orange. This shade is like a bright pinky coral shade. It has a bit of like a neon tint to it, like it wants to be a bold color, but it's still like a deeper, rosier shade. Then we have the shade Rosemary, which is described as a blue-based rose red. This shade is like a deep, rosy pink with a hint of red to it. Doesn't look truly red, but it's more like a rosy, deep pink shade. And then we have the shade Wine O'Clock, which is described as a cool tone berry red. This one is a deep raspberry shade. It's a rich pigmented shade. It's not really red, it's not pink. It's more on that deep kind of purple berry shade. It's very gorgeous. It's not too rich in pigmentation though. Even though it looks very deep in the pan, it almost comes off a little bit lighter on my skin. So here you have these swatches. These are more of the red and berry tones, some of the rosy salmon shades. These are really richly pigmented. Some of the redder tones, so like the starting shades out here, are a little bit drier in texture, but they apply really well. None of these shades apply patchy. Some do take a little bit of layering up, and then some are just rich pigment in one swipe. I really think these are great red shades, and there are different nuances to them. They're different from like the regular shades on the market. Now let's move on to the shimmery shades. The first shade up is Icicle, which is described as an icy white. This is, just like it says, it's an icy white shade. I kind of see a hint of kind of pink or a little peach to this shade. It's a really beautiful icy white. It's not too opaque though, you do have to build it up, but I think it would make a great inner tear duct highlight. Then we have the shade Satellite. This one is described as an ultra foil silver. This is like the perfect aluminum foil silver. It's not too bright white, but it's not too deep gray either. It's just the perfect level of silver, and it has a hint, just a hint of warmth to it that makes it a little bit more wearable. Then we have the shade Creamsicle, which is described as a medium tone creamy orange. This one is a very pale, like orange peach. To me, it's not really a bold orange. It's very light. It definitely is a creamsicle shade. And it doesn't apply very well. You have to build this one up. Then we have Icy Frap. This one is described as an icy cool, ultra foiled silver gold. This one is such a beautiful, subdued, like bronzy gold, like a light bronzy gold. I don't really see the silver, but I can see them saying it's silver just because it's a little bit lighter than a deep bronze, and it's not really yellow gold. It's such an interesting gold. It's really beautiful and it applies really well, no issues. Then we have On Ice. This one is described as a nude champagne. That description is exact. It is such a beautiful, like a rosy champagne shade. It's really beautiful. It's more on the nudie side, so it's a little bit more wearable. It's not too icy. Then we have Rose Gold, which is described as a highly foiled rose gold. To me, it's not really rose gold because it's not really on the pinker side or on the cooler side. It's definitely more of a peach champagne or peach gold. It's really beautiful though. Then we have Storm. This one is described as an icy muted purple with hints of taupe. This one is described perfectly as well. It is a muted purple, like a dirty purple with a little hint of taupe, which is giving it that more gray undertone. This is so beautiful. It works great in a smoky eye, just an all over wash. Oh my god, so stunning, and it applies so well, smoothly, builds up. There are hints of pink and purple. It's so gorgeous, love it. Then we have Iced Coffee. This is described as a deep antique gold. This to me is more of a deep brown bronze shade with a hint of olive to give it that more tarnished look. This is so gorgeous. Again, a great color for an all over look, like an everyday smoky eye. So gorgeous. I love this one as well. Then we have Pistol, which is described as a gunmetal taupe. This one is so beautiful. It's like a deep brown taupe and it's metallized. I love a taupe. Oh my god, and this is so gorgeous. These last three shades are stunning and they apply so well. These are such great shades. So here you have the first set of metallic shades. They're really gorgeous. They apply really well to the skin. They build up nicely and they have such perfect undertones to them. They're so great. And these are great neutral tones. They're not really bold and colorful, but they still give you that intensity that you want from a metallic shadow. And they're so beautiful. Look at this. Oh my god, so great. Moving on, we have the shade My Sunshine. This is described as a pale yellow. This shade is a pale yellow shade. It's very icy and it's a little bit chunky, so it's harder to pick up on the brush and smooth out, so it's better to go in with your finger, but it's a cute enough shade. The next shade is Going Bananas, which is described as an electric yellow. This is a bright, shiny, sunshine yellow shade. It is so gorgeous. If you're looking for metallic yellow, this is a great one, and it doesn't lean too yellow gold. It's just like a true metallic yellow. I love it. Then we have the shade You're Cheesy, which is described as an electric orange. This one is a beautiful, almost like mac and cheese golden orange. It's so bright and metallic. I also like this shade. This one takes a little bit of smoothing out too, but once you get it smooth on the lids, it's gonna look phenomenal. Then we have the shade Sweet Tea. This one is a beautiful, bright, bold, metallic orange. It leans a little bit on the coppery side as well. Really stunning, it applies well. Then we have the shade Make It Rain, which is described as an olive green. This is a beautiful, deep, metallic olive green with hints of brown. It's a beautiful shade and it applies so well. Great pigmentation and it's really smooth. Then we have the shade How High. This is more of a golden olive green. It's a muted shade with more gold sheen to it. Also very gorgeous. I really like that shade as well. Here we have a matte shade mixed in. This one is Savage. It's described as a true yellow based olive green. This is a beautiful medium deep olive green. I think it's a little brighter than like a true olive. It comes off like a dirty grass green and it layers up really nicely and it's smooth. Really like that shade as well. Then we have the shade Kiwi, which is described as a highly foiled mint sage green. This is a beautiful icy mint green shade and it applies so smoothly. Really nice shade. Then we have the shade Electric Mint, which says the name says it all, which it does. This is a beautiful, like, shiny yellow mint green. It does kind of radiate a bit, especially next to Kiwi. It does look a lot more bold and intense. Then we have the shade Jade, which is described as a mint green. This one is a cooler, more blue-based mint. So you see the three shades that are considered mint greens. They're very different. If you're going for more of a subdued pastel mint versus an electric mint versus more of a blue-based mint shade, you can then select between these three shades. Then we have the shade Waves. This one is a beautiful metallic teal green. It's really beautiful and really smooth and applies well. Then we have the shade Lemon Lime, which is described as a vibrant yellow green. This one is a beautiful, like, electric lemon green. It's so shockingly beautiful. I love that shade as well. So here we have those shades swatched. I really think all of these shades are gorgeous. They apply well. They smooth out on the skin really nicely, except for the really pale yellow, which is the first shade. Otherwise, I think the other shades apply really well. And depending on what kind of undertone you're going for, you have a great selection of greens and yellows in this collection. Here we have a couple more mattes mixed into the shimmer. So we have the shade Kitty, that is described as a soft pale pink. This one is a beautiful, like, dusty pastel pink. It's very muted. It's on the cool tone side and it's so beautiful and it layers up really nicely. I like this shade a lot. Then we have the shade Mojito, which is described as an electric turquoise. This one is a beautiful shade and it applies so well in one swipe. It has great pigmentation. It's like, yeah, it's like a beautiful minty green, like an electric minty green. Gorgeous. I love, love, love this shade so much. Then we have the shade Last Summer, which is described as a deep warm peach. This one is another beautiful matte. It's so smooth, applies really well. It's like a medium tone orangey peach, or like, yeah, like a muted peach orange. It's really great. I think this would be great for warm looks. Then we're moving on to the frosty shade. So we have the shade Wednesday, which this is a Mean Girls reference. So you know it says, on Wednesday we wear pink. So this is a very light, icy pastel pink. This one takes a little bit of building up. It's not the smoothest shade, but it's a beautiful light icy pink. Then we have the shade Pink Frosting. This one is described as an ultra foil medium pink. This is a medium toned, I would say salmon pink. It definitely leans on the warm side and it takes some building up. Again, not the smoothest shade. Then we have the shade Not You next, which is described as a pinkish purple. I don't know where this would be a purple. This is definitely more of a metallic cranberry. It's not my favorite kind of shade and it does take some building up, but it's nice enough. Then we have the shade Private Jet. This one is described as a purple plum and it says it's high foiled. This one is a muted plummy purple shade. Again, not my favorite color. It's not really a pretty shade, but if you're into like these muted purples, this might be a good one. Then we have the shade Peri. This is described as a periwinkle. And this one is a beautiful, I would call it like a periwinkle lavender. It's a beautiful light pale purple shade and it applies really nicely. I like this shade. Then we have the shade Pretty Little Lilac. This is described as a highly foiled icy lilac. So a lilac leans a little bit more on the red purple side versus a lavender, which is more on the blue side. And you can see the difference between that shade and the periwinkle shade. Then we have the shade Ultra Violence. This is described as an electric blue violet. This is a beautiful blue-based purple shade. It does take a little bit to smooth it out, but as you can see, it has pretty nice color payoff in one swipe. Then we have the shade I'm Too Royal. This is a deep blue violet foil shade. This one is a bold, bright blue purple shade, and it's much smoother than the ultraviolet shade, and it's gorgeous. So if you're looking for a more blue-based metallic purple, that's a great one. Ultraviolet is definitely more red-based. So here you have those shades swatched. I really love the 3 mattes that were swatched in this lineup, and then the 2 purples are gorgeous. The other shades like the pinks, I'm not really the biggest fan of. They're just not a great color on my skin tone, but there you have the options. And to me, these are a little bit more flaky. They take a little work to smooth them out. And the periwinkle and lilac shade, they're a little bit on the chunkier side, so you do need to work to smooth those out on the skin. Moving on, we have the final shades. The first up is Bubbles, which is described as a highly foiled icy baby blue. This takes a little bit of building up and it's a little bit flaky, but it's a really beautiful icy blue shade. It's like a medium blue. Well, no, I would say it's a turquoise blue. This to me is a deeper version of a baby blue. It's not an icy light blue. It definitely is more on the light medium side. Then we have the shade Deep Waters, which is described as a deep turquoise. This one is a beautiful, smooth, deep turquoise shade. It's like a bluey teal. It's so gorgeous and it's smooth. It applies well in one stroke. Then we have the shade Under the Sea, which is described as a rich sapphire blue. This one is such a beautiful, true sapphire blue. It's really bright and in your face. And again, another smooth shade. It's not very chunky at all, and it applies well in one swipe. And then we have the shade Blue Jeans, which is described as an icy platinum blue. This one is beautiful. I love how different this one is. It's like an icy jean blue, but it has that silvery reflect. It's really gorgeous. I love this shade as well. So here you have the 4 blue shades, and I think 3 of them are gorgeous. The first one is a little bit chunky, but the other 3 applied very smoothly on the skin. They have nice color payoff, and I like how these shades look after all. Blues, I absolutely love blues and teals. So now that you have seen the swatches, right, let's go ahead and run through the 5 P's, and I'm going to try to run through these pretty quickly. So the first one I'm going to talk about is purchasing, and these are available through their website, givemeglowcosmetics.com. That's the only place that you can currently purchase these eyeshadows, and you can also follow them on Instagram where you can keep up with their new launches, their new releases. You can also see swatches, and they will give you details on when they're going to restock items. So that's the biggest thing about this brand. They tend to be out of stock of a lot of their eyeshadows, a lot of their palettes, because they're a smaller brand. They're an indie brand, so they don't have like a lot of capital to invest all at once. Plus they're a small team, so they don't have tons and tons of product available so that everybody can get their hands on them and that they can always keep stocked. So what you end up having to do is either stock their website or keep up with their Instagram for when they're gonna be restocking items. What I like about them though is they're pretty consistent with when they restock. They restock on Fridays. They launch new products on Fridays. It's always Fridays. So if you're like in the middle of the week and you're like, oh my god, did I miss a restock? No, just wait for it. Check on Fridays. They're gonna launch their new items and they're gonna do their restocks, and they're pretty good at keeping you up to date on what's coming up. So I do like them for that. And the website is okay, like it's easy-ish to navigate. It's not the best, but they're launching a new website and it looks a lot easier to navigate, and I can't wait for the new website. I can't wait for their new products. Like they have palettes that come out all the time, and they come out with new colors all the time as well. And that is a bit exciting because they're like always new shades to check out, but it's also irritating because you'll place an order like the week before and then they launch new shades again and you're like, what the hell, I want those too, and you always have to pay for shipping. For shipping, I think I typically pay between $6 and $8. I haven't really paid too much more than that, but it's still shipping. Like you're paying for shipping each time, and they don't really have a ton of affiliate codes, but there are codes out there that you can find for 10% off that kind of alleviates the cost of shipping. And then with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the price. So these eyeshadows retail for $7 a piece, which is not a bad price point if you really think about it, because the MAC Pro Pan eyeshadows, the ones just in the magnetized pans, are also $7 a piece, and those are small pans. These eyeshadows are pretty large from Give Me Glow, which is one of my complaints. I'd rather have smaller eyeshadows than these big old pans because they're just a little bit of a pain in my ass to store, but I still love them. But I'd rather them do smaller eyeshadow pans. I don't even mind paying the $7 because I do think they're worth it even in a smaller size. These contain 3 grams or 0.12 ounces. That is double. Do you hear me? Double a MAC eyeshadow. A MAC eyeshadow is 0.5, sometimes they're 0.6 ounces. So you are getting a ton of product. We're talking about double to more than double the size of a MAC eyeshadow, a Makeup Geek eyeshadow, Anastasia Beverly Hills single eyeshadows, Urban Decay. Like, come on, you're getting double for $7, which is about the same price point as all these other brands with half the product. So kudos to you, Give Me Glow, but you can make smaller pans. I'm okay with that, but you know, it is what it is when it comes to that. And like I said, you do have to factor in shipping because the shipping, you do have to pay for that each time, and the shipping tends to be around the $6 to $10 mark. So if you want to place an order, you kind of got to just gauge it, like when are you going to order, so you can order everything that you want and only pay shipping once. But then, like I said, they kind of release things that you're like, oh my god, I should have gotten that. So you just got to work with them for that, but that's a little bit of a pet peeve for me. Then we'll just flow right into the packaging. Each of their eyeshadows come in these little protective sleeves, you know, the typical little single eyeshadow little envelopes. And they're simple, basic, nothing to them. It's a pretty little package though. I do like it. And on here you have the size and information and the manufacturing details. It does say it's made in the USA, so props again. And that they're vegan and cruelty free. So kudos to Give Me Glow. I think it's cute, simple, basic packaging, nothing to it. They also have palettes available if you're interested in buying their palettes. Cute palettes too, really sturdy. Not flimsy at all, they don't feel cheap. And then they have these little dots at the top that you can actually write the eyeshadow names and erase them as needed, but I thought that was a cute touch. But the eyeshadow pans, like I said, are these larger circular type pans that are already magnetized, so you just need an empty magnetic palette to pop those in. You don't have to apply your own magnet. And then on the back of each of these eyeshadows, you have a label that gives you the eyeshadow name. It also tells you what finish it is, if it's a foil or ultra matte, and it has the expiration date, which is 24 months. 24 months, 2 years. Good job there, Give Me Glow. So that's what you can expect from their packaging. Now let's go ahead and talk about the product and the performance. And the first thing I want to note for you guys is that these eyeshadows do not look or swatch the way they show them on the website. That's one thing that kind of like had me questioning myself, because there's some shadows that once you get them, they look a lot darker than they do on the website, because I'd be expecting like a pastel purple and then I'd end up with a medium tone purple, and then I'm confused because I'm like, is this right? And then even when you have the eyeshadow in the pan looking at it, it swatches even darker than it looks in the pan. So just keep that in mind. That's why I wanted to do this swatch video, so you can get a truer version of the colors. Like you can see them on my skin tone and get a better idea of what the colors actually look like versus what they look like on the website. They do great swatches on their Instagram. They have fun color stories. They look sexy on their Instagram, right? But then you get them and you're like, that color looks a little bit different than what they look like in person. So I wanted to give you my version, my camera setup, my filming setup to see how they look on my complexion. That being said though, I think these eyeshadows are so good. Let's talk about the matte shades. The matte shades are pigmented. They're a little powdery though, so you don't want to go digging into them at all. You want to just tap and you're gonna get the pigment. Don't worry about a color payoff, girl. Just tappity tap and just blendy blend. Now I do suggest using a primer for these. If you use a great primer, you're gonna get more longevity from the shades. You're gonna get more pigmentation because they can kind of fade over time. Like throughout where they'll fade a little bit, but if you use like a solid primer, you will not have a problem. And they blend really nicely as well. I didn't have any trouble with these blending, but with the more pigmented shades, like the ultra matte pigments, just be a little bit careful with the blend because they can get stuck to a sticky primer. So I would recommend like setting your primer down a little bit, or just waiting for it to set down and stuff, like dry down, and then go in with your blend. But these still blend out pretty nicely, no issues. The other thing I'll note is that these can have a little trouble trouble layering up. So I wouldn't go in and pack like 5 colors on top of each other. Like 2 or 3 should be fine and they'll work together fine, no problem. But if you start trying to pack too many colors on, they can get a little bit patchy and lift off each other. So just be mindful of that. What you can do in this case is put down your darkest color first and then use a lighter color to blend out, rather than putting your lighter color first and then using the darker shade to build up dimension. But I don't find it to be too much of an issue, because as long as I'm using a good primer and like my usual brushes, they apply just fine. I just don't try to layer up too much, so keep that in mind. As for the shimmers, I find that these work best with your fingers. They just apply and smooth out better with the warmth of your fingers, but I'm not a finger person, right? You know that already. So for me, I just use a stickier primer. You can even use a glitter glue, or you can dampen your brush, and you would want to use a stiffer, either a natural hair brush, because I do find that they work well with goat hair bristles. They do stick to the bristles and you just apply them and melt them into your skin, or you use a synthetic brush like my Rite Aid brush works well. Even the Anastasia brush works well to just apply them, and you can spritz your brush with a little bit of Fix Plus or setting spray just to make them apply a little bit more smoothly on the lids. But those shimmers, okay, they're metallic, they're beautiful. If you apply them dry though, make sure that you press them in, because they can lift and fade away a little bit, which is why I'm recommending to use a sticky primer or use your finger, because they can kind of want to dust away a little bit. So be careful with those. You saw in the swatches too that some of the shimmers might want to lift up a little bit, but it still retains like the intensity. Like it's not like it just dusts away and then the color just dulls down. It just uses a little bit of intensity, but not too much where I'm like, oh, these are duds, throw them all out. They still will look great on the eyes, but you just want to be careful not to pick up too much product and then it goes dusting off. So just layer up. Don't like go in full on, dig into the pan or anything. Just one layer at a time to build up the intensity, and you're gonna get such a sexy look. Like these, listen, these are so good, and I love that they have different colors, like bright metallics, colorful ones, like interesting shades. They're not just sticking to bronzes and golds. No, they're out here with yellows and purples and pinks and pastels and like doing it, okay? I love this brand. So overall, I can't say enough about this brand. I think they're phenomenal. I think their eyeshadow formula is top notch. It's one of my favorite brands. It's one of my favorite indie brands, hands down, and I have no problems recommending this brand at all. I think they do great eyeshadows, and for a very affordable cost, $7 for 0.12 ounce of product, 3 grams. That's a ton of product. The only complaint is, can we get smaller ones? I don't mind paying the $7 still. Can I just get small? You know what? Whatever. I mean, do what you do. We would like smaller pens though. And they also have beautiful highlighters and lip products. I didn't get into those in this video. Of course, this is all about the single eyeshadows. And like I said, if you want to see me swatch the palettes, just let me know and I can get into that as well. But like I said, definitely highly recommended, and I say, yo, you can't go wrong if you choose to try these out. Let me know if you have tried them out. What do you think? I know I've gotten feedback from some of you guys like, yo, these are fire, and that's why I wanted to do a swatch video, so you can see more shades and see like, what do you want to get, and like see how they look on my complexion and see how they don't look on the website, because not all of them match the website, child. Hey, listen, I'm just saying, all right? So hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. I will leave the link on where you can pick these up. That is not an affiliate link. I ain't getting nothing from this. I don't have a discount code. I don't have an affiliate code, but make sure you search for a discount code for that 10% off. All right, make sure you do that, because every little bit counts in savings. But if you wanted to support an indie brand, especially now, you want to go ahead and support where you can. These are the brands that I think need our support over the big multi-million-dollar and billion-dollar companies that are gonna benefit from the government stimulus package. Like, those are the brands you can avoid. But for these indie brands, these independent owners that are just trying to make ends meet, if you can, definitely show your support to them in this time. And it's still gonna be a win-win, because these are fantastic products, all right? I'm gonna go ahead and leave links to my Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. And until my next video, which will be very soon, I love you guys. Stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.